All right, welcome back to our second week. We're doing 2 weeks on Philip K. Dick adaptations. Last week was Minority Report. This week we're talking Screamers.
The cult classic from 1997, which bombed in the box office, but it has a huge attraction now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you get a lot. I saw a lot of people before I saw the film, because this was my first time watching it, that related this film to Event Horizon, where like it was a film that definitely is like got a fan base that's been loyal since it came out, and it's just kind of like people telling you, have you seen Screamers? Have you seen Event Horizon? I believe last week Nick was like, have you seen Screamers? And I said no. So, but it's not a particularly easy film to find too. Usually these films kind of exist on one streaming service or another, and they're kind of floating around. And I noticed this one, like literally as I was about to watch it, moved from one service to another. So I had to go and kind of chase it as I was going.
Yeah, it was like free one time and Amazon Prime, and then when I wanted to go back and watch it again, it was like gone.
Yeah, but I was excited for
just
it
like a screamer in this.
Yeah. Well, I was excited for this one because of Peter Weller. I love RoboCop. I love his work even in the Star Trek film that he was in a couple years back, and I think he did the best episode of Fringe that show ever had. So I was really excited to.
If you need a guy to carry a movie that's kind of down, depressing, and nihilistic for a nihilistic movie,
he's not a bad choice for that one.
No.
So today we're going to try not to scream so much so you can keep the volume at a reasonable volume, and we're just going to kind of deep dive into Screamers, this cult classic. So stay tuned with us, and we'll give you our thoughts on whether this film was a scream or not. Kyle and Nick on Film. Welcome back to Kyle and Nick on Film. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
And I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, which you can find on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. And today we're going to talk about one of the cult classics from the late 90s, I think in like 95, 96.
Yeah, I know it premiered at the Toronto Film Festival in 95, and I don't know when it actually came out. But
I can remember this actually, there's a TV spot that actually showed the very gory part of a screamer cutting off a guy's knee. They put that on TV.
Really?
Yes, they put that. That's how I got gravitated. So it's like,
I mean, that would definitely be a convincing argument for me to watch
right.
it too.
So there, if you can find it on YouTube, I'm sure. But there was a TV spot for seeing Screamers, and they showed the most gaudy part of the movie in it. Like they knew that.
Well, and on the subject of strange ways to give you a film, at the outset of watching this film with my wife, we both remarked about 10 minutes in, I was like, you've already shown us the creatures. Like, early on in the film, within 5 minutes, you see the creatures. Little did we know where the story was going to go and how it would matter, where that didn't end up being that big of a problem. But upon first viewing 5 minutes in, I was like, well, now we know what they look like. They look like the little ball from Phantasm.
Yeah, a little bit like small little miniature skeleton tremors.
Yeah,
Tremors.
Basically like little tremors, graboids made out of metal. And I was like, why would you show us this so early on? I was like, take a page out of the book for Jaws, man. But then we realized that there's more to this story. And the biggest thing I took away from this film is I kept pausing it and going like, well, wait, why don't they do this? And then I pressed play, and then they did that. So I'd like to think I was, pretty ahead of the curve. But at the same time, that's kind of one of the benefits of Philip K. Dick is he does tend to look at every option when he's writing. Like, his stories are very complex, and it's not too often that he can get tripped up by his readers, or in this case, by the viewers.
So this is definitely a Cold War story based on his short story called Second Variety. Mm-hmm. He got the inspiration from it because we're learning about the Japanese soldiers stuck on islands who were, after 10 years, did not know the war was over. Mm-hmm. In fact, people would come and say the war is over, and they would not believe them and fire upon them. And this was a kind of a template, if you watch the movie, of his inspiration coming from.
Oh, yeah.
And actually people that are coming to anybody approaching you during wartime, you think is as a threat, even though they're trying to help you out.
Mm-hmm. And as you said before, the story is, of course, set on Earth. The original short story itself is set on Earth instead of the planet. We're on Sirius 6B, which I found kind of interesting that they would take it, because it was a lower budget film, to take it and push it more into the sci-fi, but maybe that way you can also use a lot more of your dense, barren landscapes kind of stuff. It did feel kind of like it was on Tatooine for a large bulk. I think it's interesting changing the name from Claws in the short story.
They're called Claws.
Screamers. Because I didn't think that Screamers was a very great title, and I didn't think it was a very great name for these creatures. I was kind of critical of that, but at the same time, like, because there was like, the Screamers are coming to get us, and I was like, okay, that's silly now.
It is kind of a silly title.
But the film was in development hell as far back as 1981. Dan O'Bannon, who wrote Alien, wrote Dark Star, and created Return of the Living Dead. Very, very big genre writer, Dan O'Bannon. Yeah. Sold this along with the rights to a couple other Philip K. Dick stories, and this film, like that screenplay, just sat there for years and years and years. Finally got a rewrite, updated a little bit. I think cheapened a little bit too, because he had a much more lavish script from what I hear.
If you watch this movie, there's definitely a lot of budget cutting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though it is a big production.
It's bigger than I expected it to be looking at the poster.
Right, yeah.
So one thing that I took away from it, though, was the story that was, of course, written by O'Bannon from the story by Philip K. Dick was so strong it makes up for a lot of what I would call the major drags or issues with the film. There are some really poor performances in this movie. Specifically, and I don't want to pick on the guy, but Andy Lauer, who played Ace, the guy who survived this crash that joins Peter Weller's character Joe on their journey, has some really bad dialogue, and he's really struggling to get it out there, and it does slow the movie down whenever Weller is not the focus of the narrative.
But you need something like, with a movie like this to actually pay off, you need Weller to be in it 95% of the time.
Yeah, and thankfully he gets a lot to do. Like when we're first introduced to him, he's got one of those great, opening shots of him laid back in the chair staring at this, I think Caesar's coin, a Roman coin that he's like looking over, and he's got that kind of like, he's basically given up, because like you said, they've been in this one location. I mean, they're playing games. They're just kind of waiting out their existence for someone to tell them that they can go home. And they don't know what's going on in the outside world. There's a lot of confusion in that first 15 minutes that I felt worked because I was confused. They were confused.
Yeah, it's definitely get that. In the book, Hendricks is described as weary, slow, weighted, and very war-torn, depressed, and his whole idea that any good news comes with some reservation. You have to wait it out with a little patience.
Yeah, and he's torn at the beginning with what he's supposed to do, because he starts learning some very hard truths in the first act of the film, and has to reconcile how he's going to respond to them, because no matter what, from the first act of the film, he doesn't have a good decision to make. It's just the least bad decision he has to try and figure out. And I was surprised with the amount of movement in the story, how simple a lot of it was. We learned some.
No, it's not a very complex.
Changes.
Yeah, a lot of stuff in it. It's not very complex.
Yeah, they really jam a lot of exposition in the first couple minutes to get you ready, and then they kind of just let them loose on their journey. So,
which is hard when you're in sci-fi and you develop the world, you want people to understand. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what we said about Dick's work as a writer, and then the way in which his films are able to be translated is that he has so much detail and world building that. It's literally a visual playground for any filmmaker that wants to do something interesting with it. And even the change from Earth to this planet embodies a lot of what he did. So
we always talk about Philip K. Dick's worlds are being dirty and nihilistic and dark and drab. This does it.
Yeah.
This is probably the most authentic.
This is probably the least likely place for me to live of any of his worlds. I'd rather stick it out in the world of Blade Runner.
I remember Roger Ebert saying this is the most depressing movie he's seen in a long time.
I could believe that. Yeah. And I think part of that too is
it's not like for depressing, but the end result to realize the whole truth comes
as the truth begins to evolve. And again, there's so many moments, because the screenplay was written back in the early 80s and languished for so long, there's moments that feel like they were used in other films later on. There's a very like Aliens, Newt kind of a moment early on in the film, but then we get our expectations subverted by the really interesting story and narrative from it that surprised me in a lot of ways. And I think that's where Screamers wins, was that the less you know, the more you'll enjoy it, I think.
I think so too, yeah.
Because again, like
we're going to actually say, do not research and go see it blindly.
I think if you're a fan of Philip K. Dick's work, you will enjoy what this film is, not knowing anything. And I'm glad I didn't know anything, even if there was a sequel actually produced in 2009 that kind of gives a little bit away in its trailer and in its poster work. So I would say ignore that too. Just see the first film to know things, but I wouldn't advise any looking into things.
I get a kick out of that. They actually in the movie said that they have to smoke cigarettes to survive the atmosphere, which is a good play. I love that play in the movie, which is like way to have some kind of
what that reminded me of? There's that scene in Thank You for Smoking where they're trying to get product placement into a sci-fi movie, and it's like the man and the woman who finished making love, and
I swear they got it from this movie.
And he's like, well, wouldn't they blow up if they're in a combined space? And he's like, no, it's just a line of dialogue. Thank God they invented the, And then that's what I thought of when I saw this play out.
This had to be the inspiration.
Yeah,
for
because all they did was they colored the cigarettes like orange or brown, and there was like, here they are, special sticks. I think that was kind of fun, and we talked a little bit about the CD player, the Walkman that's being used in there too. I guess we're in a time right now where people do collect old video cameras. We watch movies that are from 80 years ago. I'm not entirely shocked that he's got a CD player. I'm just surprised it works.
Right. It's like Star-Lord's.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, still working. Okay.
That's the surprising part, really. There, it's just whatever company that was, keep an eye on it because they're doing well. I thought the film looks dirty. It's shot pretty dirty. It doesn't have a very good feeling about it. Like at least other Philip K. Dick stories, they don't seem as bleak, even though they're dirty.
That's what the movie. That's what it's very bleakish, and I think that's something we're trying to avoid because if you bring up that word, people are hesitant to watch it. But I think there's some very entertaining stuff. There's a mystery to it that keeps untangling as you go.
Yeah, I think similar in how it's unlocked, I guess, as Minority Report, which we talked about last week. Screamers does have a pretty nice little narrative for it. I do think its biggest fault, though, this movie completely falls apart at the end.
The third act?
I was not. There's two major reveals involving two of the characters that we've enjoyed, like and like how our mystery starts to resolve itself. That I didn't buy at all, and maybe it's because I don't think they were set up, these reveals.
No.
Because on the surface, they're not that crazy if you understand the craziness that's taken place up until now.
I can say now the book ending, Second Variety, is much different from the movie ending. And I think when you have a movie like this, you're building up to it. You have to have a mystery, so a movie has to have a gigantic payoff to it.
Yeah, and I think again, like they went bigger, and that's not always something you have to do. I've often said to people like,
I think it's almost like an automatic when you do a sci-fi. We need action because it's a sci-fi. But not necessarily true all the time.
Well, recently I think about War for the Planet of the Apes being a sequel to Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. The action set pieces that are the finales to both of those films actually get smaller when they go to war. War gets a little bit more intimate, a little bit more singular, and I think that works well. There's also a real deep cut pull here. The Samurai Trilogy from the 50s. The second film ends with this big, almost Kill Bill Volume 1 like slash down that takes place. The third film, the finale of this trilogy, is two guys on a beach. Like, it's okay to go small if your story serves it, because the tension and the action will serve it. I think this is one where they tried to go bigger, and then even after the first big twist reveal, they go even bigger. Yeah.
Which is a lot of people when you write, especially if you're a writer and you write and you do reveal your twist a little too early in the story, you almost automatically feel that you have to do something to keep your audience entertained. And I think that's one of the things they had to do with this script, that once you entangle this mystery, that maybe once everything resolved, to keep your interest, we have to do big explosions and all that.
Yeah. For me, it felt like a Russian doll when it's like they assume that there's more layers in there that we need to see, when it's like this one right here is good enough. Yeah, we're good. We can just leave it at that. I think they set up enough with that first hour 15 where this finale piece could be something simplistic, because we've had our mythology. Now we just need to see it through to the end. I
would actually like to be interested in see if somebody do a remake of this.
I think so.
I think this deserves kind of a remake.
Well, that's kind of the nice thing about Dick's work is the film versions of all of his works are so drastically different. They embody a lot of the bones of his work, but they're all very different. Blade Runner is very dissimilar to Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. Yeah. Total Recall's very different from We Can Remember It For You Wholesale.
And his TV show, The Man in the High Tower.
Yeah. And of course that one is because it's such a long-running narrative. Yeah. They're also different. I think you could remake them and do just fine. Yeah. As long as you give enough distance. And this is one too, like this film is rather forgotten. If you didn't call it Screamers, you could come up with a different name and no one would know the difference. So, although I don't think Second Variety was that good of a title either, so I can't criticize too much. Yeah, so when it all breaks,
used.
Yeah, Crawl's already been used. Crawlers.
That was our first episode.
So Nick, having a chance to revisit the film, do you think this is worthy of watching again? Do you
in the late 90s, there's some fresh new things about it, and actually it was regarded as a horror movie more than a sci-fi movie because of the way it was advertised. And I think it's not necessarily horror. There definitely is some horror components to it, but I can consider it more of a murder mystery sci-fi than anything. It's a little bit dated. It's a little bit trapped in the 90s of sci-fi. There's a little bit of technology that looks a little bit choppy, but I think is the fun of it. I mean, obviously the animation components give it a little more of a nostalgia to it than them trying to look like advanced.
Yeah, and the film kind of does have that issue of being in the 90s when everyone was all about CG. And sometimes you need to know if you can't do it well, just don't find a different way to do it. And I think this is one where CG was such a big deal. Jurassic Park had just come out, and I've talked about this a lot with Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park had one benefit a lot of other films, even up to today, don't have, which is time. Put a lot of time into those CGI effects to make them look good. And they also utilized a lot of physical effects with those visual effects too. This is one where definitely you can tell that the aging has caught up with it a little bit more, but I didn't find that to be necessarily a drag because the story is so well constructed up to a certain point that I was fascinated throughout. So this is definitely a recommendation for me too. It definitely has aged. The ending, you may love it, you may hate it. I enjoyed the last 10 seconds, and what they kind of linked to there was a really fun little moment of I found the film to end on quite a nice note, even though I didn't really like some of the reveals. Real quick, we got to talk about Jennifer Rubin, who is a big genre.
She's kind of like the only female in it.
Yeah, she really is. You might know her from Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. She was Taryn, the spiky-haired, knife-wielding girl who gets a pretty fun interaction with Freddy Krueger. She's in The Doors. She was in The Crush. Lots of genre pictures. And
I think she's done a little bit of stage too. Yeah.
And she's done some really great work. And she's, in this film too, like a lot of her earlier work was done in a way where, they prettified her a lot. And she's very like dirt grime kind of.
Even when she's dirt grime, she's the best looking one of all of them.
That's true.
Yeah.
But I gotta mention her because I think she's definitely a genre personality who hardcore horror fans will like, and maybe that's one of the reasons people saw it as a horror film too. She definitely gets some time to shine here. Even if I don't really like where her character arc goes, I think she does some solid work. So
I'm going to mention quick Roy Dubois, who's from Canada. Actually, he was in the movie. He actually did his own did a movie called Richard, based on the NHL Hockey Hall of Fame Maurice Richard, and he did a fantastic performance. He really does look like Maurice Richard. He did excellent work in that movie. You want to check that out.
Definitely. So, hey, have you seen Screamers? You may have heard them. Have you seen them? Drop your comments below if you've seen the film before. Yeah. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, I know it's on Stars right now. It's a lot of places you can rent it from. I think Hulu has it now too. Check the film out. Give us your thoughts about it. Have you read the story it's based on? Do you like one more than the other? We'd like to hear from you.
You can definitely smell the secondhand smoke from the movie.
Definitely, yes. You may need to clean yourself both before and after.
Yeah, you do need to take a shower after that. You kind of
So definitely let us know in the comment section below what you think about it. If you enjoyed this content, drop a like with us here. Check out our Patreon at patreon.com/KyleNickOnFilm. If you can't afford to participate in that, share the video, get the conversation going. That's what we created the whole channel for, is to really get that conversation, not just between two guys who can't stop talking film, but between two guys who can't stop talking film and everybody else on the internet.
So love to hear from the other people about movies.
Definitely. So you can find my reviews on goatfilmreviews.com. I got a lot of those things there. I know, Nick, we can find you out about.
You can find the St. Paul Filmcast, where I interview local innovative filmmakers from the Minnesota Twin Cities area on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play.
Definitely. So thank you guys for joining us so much. We had a scream talk in this film with you, and we can't wait to see you guys next week.